Hi, I'm Paul Guppy. I'm Senior Researcher for the Washington Policy Center, and this is our regular weekly legislative update that tracks important issues that are going on in our legislature right now. They're in the beginning weeks of a 105-day session. As a matter of fact, this is the day 27 of the session, and as I mentioned in the past, the next cutoff date for policy bills to be passed out of committee is coming up on February 21st. After that, any policy-related bill is supposed to be done for the session, but of course the leadership can always bring back a bill at any time. And then later on, there's another cutoff date for bills related to fiscal and budget matters. That's a little later, February 28th. And there again, the system is the same, that budget-related bills and fiscal bills are supposed to be passed out of committee in either the House or the Senate by February 28th in order to be considered live or moving on. So they will rapidly cut down on these several thousand bills that have been introduced. And by the time we get into March, the legislature's work will be much more focused and we'll have a clearer idea of what bills might be heading to the governor's desk. So with that, I do want to remind our viewers always, first of all, how much we appreciate you watching our videos and for your support of Washington Policy Center, and to encourage you to like and share our video. It really helps us reach a direct audience. Our audience is growing, and there aren't a lot of sources about what's going on the insider view of Olympia, and we are trying to contribute to that, and we definitely are doing an end run around traditional, what I call gatekeeper media, the way things used to operate in the past. That is no longer the case, and now groups like Washington Policy Center can go directly to the public and provide you with interesting information. Also, we always encourage people to find out more about the issues that I'm talking about. Check the facts, form your own opinion. I don't have time in these videos to go through an exhaustive discussion of every issue, but in any case, we really appreciate it when people get their own information. As I said, form your own opinion, have your own thoughts. We are not trying to spin anything in a particular way. We have our viewpoint, we have our principles, those are very clear, but mainly we just want to tip people off as to what the legislature is doing and make you aware of what might be coming down the road. So with that, I'll start off with a couple of bills that we've been tracking, and in a moment you will notice that there's a certain pattern with these, and I'll get to that in a second. The first bill I want to look at is HB 1409. Our Vice President, Todd Myers, has been writing on this issue, and what that would do is raise energy costs. And the mechanism that the bill proposes is to make changes in the low carbon fuel standard, which the legislature passed a few years ago. And when the bill was passed at that time, there were certain promises that were made about funding transportation, about creating markets for farmers and more jobs for biofuel workers. The whole idea is to encourage renewable fuels. So there were specific provisions that were in the bill that gave assurances to lawmakers and the public that these promises would be made in the years ahead. Here we are, 4 years after the bill was passed, 2 years after it was implemented, after all of us across Washington have experienced higher gas prices because of this low carbon fuel standard, it's called. And here comes the legislature now to repeal those promises that were made. The bill, it turns out, is not reducing CO2 emissions in any effective way. As Todd points out, this metric is not contributing to helping the environment. And but Representative Fitzgibbons, who was pushing the bill in the House, his excuse or explanation for doing this is that, well, now in hindsight that we see how this program is working, now the program can be improved. It needs an update. And as I always point out, grammar is the insight into interior thinking. This kind of phrasing is not meaning neutral. That's sort of code language to mean repealing provisions in the bill when it was originally passed. The bottom line there is breaking promises that were made. If you say that, taking away something you committed to is, quote, an update, I think a lot of people would really not see it that way. To me, it reminded me of that famous Darth Vader quote from Star Wars, in which Lando Calrissian says, hey, this was not part of our deal, and Darth Vader says, I'm changing the terms of our deal. And that's basically what the legislature is doing here. We see a consistent pattern of bills that are passed promising one thing, and then within a very short time, the majority in the legislature starts to pull those back. That bill is now in the House Environmental Committee, and it'll be up for a vote there probably in the next week or so. The next issue is, again, same pattern. This is a bill in the Senate, SB 5382, and this undermines the initiative process. So again, pulling back a commitment to the public that to be able to participate in direct democracy. What this bill would do was require the Secretary of State to confirm all of the addresses, in addition to the signatures, that are on petitions that are turned into the Secretary of State. As we saw last year, when several popular initiatives were advanced by the voters, one initiative can be 500,000 signatures. What the Secretary of State does very effectively is to confirm whether those signatures are registered voters. This bill adds more detailed requirements that the address information has to be correct. The other information that's put on the initiative has to be correct. They want to add a requirement that the person who gathered the signatures has to sign it on the back and swear under penalty of law that all of the information on the petition is accurate. So that is designed to discourage people from circulating petitions with their friends and neighbors, or a small business owner who may want to offer the petition to his customers. It creates risk, and that's the purpose, create legal risk and a threat for people who get involved in promoting initiatives engaging in direct democracy. As you can expect, Tim Eyman, who's known for promoting initiatives, went ballistic over this bill, and he remarkably restrained his emotions when he spoke to the committee about this. But even so, his testimony on February 4th, it's about a minute and a half, really sums up what's going on with this bill. And his bottom line is, we think the analysis is accurate, is that it disenfranchises people who want to be engaged in the initiative process. The bill is scheduled for a vote in the Senate State Government Committee on February 14th. And again, we'll see whether it even comes up for a vote, because there has been a lot of pushback on this bill. The next bill that I want to look at is also in the Senate. It's SB 5181. We got a tip-off a few days ago from Senator Shelley Short, who pointed out that this bill had been sent to rules and then pulled out of rules very quickly and sent to the Senate floor. This happened super fast. Senator Short posted a short video that from the state capitol that indicated what was going on. We followed up on it to find out exactly what the bill does and where it is in the process. So it was rushed to the Senate floor and it was passed on February 15th, or February 5th, rather. So it has passed the Senate already. This is what the bill does, is that it rolls back promises that were made last spring when the legislature passed with bipartisan support the initiative, I have the number here, Initiative 2081, which was the much vaunted and broadly supported parental rights initiative. This initiative not only got a record number of signatures to submit it to the legislature, but the Democratic leadership was so impressed with this popular movement that they decided to pass the initiative with broad bipartisan support. Democrats and Republicans both voted for it. Of course, we know that last year was a highly contested election year. I'm sure that the thinking behind this was, among the Democrats, is let's remove this issue from the public debate in March so that it doesn't appear on the ballot in November. And that's exactly what happened. Okay, that's the politics. But from Washington Policy Center's point of view, we want better relations between parents and students and schools. We want better education for students. That's the heart of the measure. The parental rights bill achieved a lot of that. And now SB 5181 has been introduced less than 11 months, okay, after the legislature passed the Parental Bill of Rights, and it starts rolling back the provisions of it. It is one point that Senator Short made is that it puts the state in the middle of the parent-child relationship. It hides student health information from parents. It undermines trust in schools. My own view, which I'll throw in here, is that there's an interesting shift between the way parents relate to an important public institution, public schools, compared to the way you're treated if your child happens to end up in the hospital, whether it's a public hospital or a private hospital. The experience for a parent is completely different. And my wife and I have seen this from experience. Many families have. If your child is in the hospital and you're a parent, you have 100% access to everything that is happening with that child. Doctors, nurses will consult with you. They'll explain to you exactly what has happened. You have 24-hour access to visiting your child, if that's medically possible. And we've had the experience of where a hospital or an emergency room will give you a 24-hour telephone number that you can call anytime. It goes right to the nurse's station, and they tell you exactly what's happening with your parent. I've had, kids in a crisis on life support. You call them up and they will just read you the data off the machine that tells you medically how your child is doing. That's an amazing contrast to what the Democrats are trying to do in rolling back parental rights. You call the school and ask medically what's happening with your kid. Did he have some kind of incident that you need to know about? And this law would empower the school officials to tell you nothing and say, we are not obligated to give you that information. So that is causing quite a bit of pushback across the state. As I mentioned, it passed the Senate already. Now it's headed over to the House. We'll see how it develops from there. The next bill I want to look at was reported by Center Square, a great source of information about what's going on in our state. And that's HB 1448, Ranked Choice Voting Bill. As a political scientist myself, I find this to be confusing and comical. This idea has been around for many, many decades. It's been tried in other jurisdictions, it's been tried in other countries, and it just never gets off the ground. And there's a good reason for that. What ranked choice voting does is you have a list of candidates, the voter ranks his choices 1 through 6, 8, 12, however many people there are. It means that you would vote for governor, you could vote for 8 different people, and you just have to number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then when they're counting the votes, they count everyone who voted for number 1, and then they take the lowest candidate and assign his votes to the other candidates. I don't even have time to explain the mathematics of how this works. It's confusing. It's supposed to lead to consensus. I think it does the opposite. And it has turned out to be very unpopular in other jurisdictions. I did a quick lookup before doing this video, and this idea has been tried and failed in Alaska, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Missouri, Nevada, and Oregon. I consider this to be again, in the world of democracy, the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad idea. But I also go with just objective, empirical experience. When an idea has been tried by real voters many, many times, and it turns out to be either unpopular or unworkable, confusing, it's not contributing to democracy. Proponents call it, quote, fair voting. What's fair about not even knowing how the election is being conducted or how it's going to turn out? There are some other interior technical problems with this. The flip side is the proud American tradition that goes back beyond the founding of our country, which is when we have a disagreement in a community, when we need to decide who's going to lead us, let's vote. The person or the initiative or the law that gets the most votes wins. That makes perfect sense. It also encourages people to come together in coalitions so they will get to 50%. Ranked choice voting divides people into different factions. Winner take all voting, or the person with the most votes, actually pulls people together, because you have to get along with others if you want to have a chance of your favorite candidate, your initiative, your law actually getting enacted. There are centuries of experience with that system of voting, and it's popular and it works very well. So we think this ranked choice voting bill is a waste of time. Again, it's HB 1448, and it's scheduled for a vote in the state government committee in the House on February 11th, and we'll see what happens there. Next are some positive bills that we see. One was introduced by Representative Travis Couture. It had a hearing in the House Education Committee. This is HB 1140. It's an education freedom bill. It would create an education savings account that could be funded up to $12,000 per family. And it would allow the family to use that money to pay for the education of a child in any form that the family chooses. Private school, tutoring, online, public school, a mix of those, buying textbooks, resources. It would pay for transportation to school. It's very flexible. 17 other states have ESA programs. again, going from empirical experience, these have been successful. Studies show that 84% of these programs result in student improvement, definitely moving in the right direction. We are impressed and complimentary to the Education Committee that they agreed to hold a hearing on this bill. Our own analyst, Vicki Murray, drove down to Olympia early in the morning, 8 a.m. for this hearing, and she was given 1 minute to testify before the committee. She presented the facts and data that I just mentioned about how it's been successful in other states. And then a member of the committee, Republican Representative Chase, asked Vicki a question about some of the data and the outcome of the studies. And while Vicki was answering, the committee chair, Representative Tomiko Santos, interrupted and said that our analyst, Vicki, was taking too much time to answer the question. So she was basically cut off. We have had this experience in the past. When a member doesn't like what he or she is hearing, they'll often say, time's up. What Vicki noticed is that it took the chair more time to explain that she was over time than it would have taken Vicki to just answer the question. So this is a process that we run into where public debate is cut off. However, we are encouraged that the committee is considering this bill, and we hope that Representative Couture is successful and encourage some more open-minded Democrats to consider a education freedom bill. Next one, also a positive bill from Republican Alex Ibarra. This would make energy more affordable in our state. His bill, HB 1253, would allow public utility districts, cities, other units of government to join in with private companies in partnership contracts in order to increase energy production. This is moving in the direction of more choices, open flexibility, more market mechanisms in producing energy for the people of our state. The way the sponsor, Representative Ibarra, describes it is this would create new options for utilities to partner with private industry to enhance energy capacity. And that's exactly what the bill would do. We like it for that reason, but also because it sets the precedent of making energy cheaper by pushing back on regulations and restrictions that prevent more production capacity. That's basically what this bill would do. We don't like the direction that energy costs taxes have gone, particularly the Inslee carbon tax, which is massively increasing the cost of energy across our state. Representative Ibarra's bill goes in the other direction. The positive news is that last Thursday, his bill passed the House by 90-6. So great bipartisan coalition coming together. It shows that in this session, Republicans and Democrats can agree on positive change for our state. I'm hopeful that the Senate will pass this and that our Governor Ferguson will sign it. But given the overwhelming support from Democrats joined with all of the Republicans, I would expect that this bill would pass. The next bill also moves in a positive direction. It's HB 1438, and that would lower housing costs. Our analyst, Mark Harmsworth, has been presenting information to the legislature in support of this bill. And the reason is because it would require that if local government agencies have not made a final decision on a request for housing permits or construction, then by the deadline that's required by law, then the permit is automatically approved by the next business day. And this is an idea that we have supported for a long time. And that is, if a government agency is blocking citizens from doing something positive, the burden is on the agency to come up with a decision, not just to let it stretch out. And the best mechanism to get that done is that if bureaucrats or agencies are sitting on a permit proposal or a request and they're not acting, they're doing nothing, that's a de facto veto on people being able to move forward. What this bill does is says, okay, if you don't act, then on the next business day, that permit is automatically approved. And that is the only way to get attention of local permitting agencies when they realize that they've lost their veto power, number one. And number two, if they don't do anything, then the private citizen is able to move forward anyway. And that's the best way to put government in its correct relationship with the rest of us. This bill, the other reason we like it is that for the first time, it takes change in a positive way to the Growth Management Act, which dates from 1995. So the Growth Management Act restricts housing supply in 28 counties across state. We think it's outdated in a lot of ways. The growth management boundaries have not been adjusted in any meaningful way for a long time. But the Growth Management Act is the primary driver of rising housing costs because it shuts off access to buildable land close to urban areas. This bill moves in the direction of making a change in the Growth Management Act regarding the permitting that I mentioned, but we also think that it will open up a discussion about, after more than 30 years, almost 30 years of living under this restriction, again, what is experience telling us? Housing costs are being driven up, and government restrictions, regulations, and taxes have a lot to do with that. And that's why we think this bill is a good idea. So with that, I'll wrap up on the bills that we're following. I would encourage folks to support Washington Policy Center. We really appreciate that. We appreciate your comments. I get a lot of good ideas from those, actually. We also would encourage you that if you want to support Washington Policy Center and stay involved with us, to sign up for our weekly email newsletter. You can do that through our website at washingtonpolicy.org. We do not spam people. When we say weekly newsletter, we mean it, once a week. Sometimes we send out twice a week, and that's because we have a special video like this one. But we do not overload people's inboxes. We know that that can be a problem. We also do not share information outside of our organization with anyone. We never do that. So we encourage you to sign up. It's be a good source of information. And lastly, I, of course, want to encourage people to tune in at noon on next Tuesday, February 11th, for our regular live on-the-go presentation with David Bose and some of our policy experts. That's also a great way to get updates. In fact, I think that's at 12:30 on February 11th. And with that, I'll wrap up and say thanks again, and I'll be back with another update in the future. Thanks.